Carl Jung said, "Awaken and shine your light for others to follow. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This is an invitation to move differently in the world, to operate from a place of deep knowing and alignment. I'm Adrienne McDonald, and welcome to the Source Code Podcast. Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back, or welcome if it's your first time. Grab your favorite beverage, and the muse is bringing us to the final sequence in the Gene Keys. I've done activation, I've done Venus, and now we're going to have an overview today of the Pearl sequence. If you have not listened to those previous episodes, I recommend that you go back and do that prior to listening to this one. I'll put a link to those in the show notes. If you would like to look at your Gene Keys profile, I will put a link to that in the show notes. So, as a recap though, there are 3 sequences in the current Gene Keys: activation, Venus, and Pearl. In each sphere of your profile, you're going to see a number. Just like in human design, there are 64. The number represents your unique Gene Keys for that sphere, which is determined by the date and time of your birth. Each Gene Key has the 3 following components: your shadow, which is a challenge that you have to surmount; your gift, a creative attribute; and your city, a transcendent realization. Now we can awaken the higher components of each of the Gene Keys by contemplating them over time and in sequence. So you will also see a line keynote. That's the small number after the dot. That's going to be 1 through 6. And that's going to describe a deeper aspect of how this Gene Key may show up in your life. All of those numbers have themes, so that show up consistently. So when you look at your Gene Keys profile, you're going to see that it's made up of grid and circles. Each of the 11 spheres of your profile represents an aspect of your life on which you may contemplate. The Gene Keys approach invites us to develop humility through embodying the 4 qualities that lie at the heart of the Gene Keys. Okay, so as you're going through the sequences, the idea is that you keep these values in mind. So there's contemplation, which is taking full responsibility of one's inner state, using everyday challenges for growth and transformation. Second one is inquiry, asking really profound questions and inviting wisdom to come from within. Cultivating a state of calm presence in all situations. And then the third is gentleness, which is nurturing a kind and gracious approach towards yourself and others, encouraging a spirit of unwinding and unlearning versus striving and fixing. And then the fourth is patience, which is cultivating compassion and honesty and curiosity with an inherent trust in the underlying process. Now, at the simplest, the Pearl is all about liberation and prosperity. It shows you how to apply the Gene Keys, both internally and externally, to your everyday and working life. However, as you go through it, as Richard would say, it's really a profound contemplation on what is the true nature of prosperity. And quite frankly, it may radically change the way you view money and perhaps even what you feel like you're here to do in life. The Pearl is really where you contemplate the inner and outer world integrations of the entire Golden Path. The Golden Path is all 3 of the sequences put together, which is exactly the reason why I recommend you start with the activation sequence and then go to the Venus sequence. Because if you jump right to the Pearl, you're losing so much of the conversation. In the Pearl, we contemplate the essential. That is the real purpose of the Pearl. And now, what does that mean? Contemplating the essential is the core work of the Pearl. By examining the shadows of the Gene Keys that you have here, you're going to uncover ways that your energy, your vitality drains away. And the Pearl acts like a little mini genetic circuit, within you. It's a thrive capacitor that condenses and it fuses and it channels all of your energy into your higher purpose, into a 0 point within you. Okay, so that central sphere is known as the pearl. It's like zeroing in on it. Okay, so in our modern world, we can't talk about prosperity without talking about money. We can't, because our modern world revolves around money. Now, this is a fact that we've become so accustomed to that a lot of us don't question. Actually, few of us question, or even can imagine a world without it. Now, as adults, money really occupies a significant portion of our thoughts and emotions. And it's really intriguing when you come across someone who does not think that way. The first thing that comes to mind is a monk sitting somewhere. But I do know several people in my own life that they just don't care that much. What the pearl invites us to deeply, the pearl invites us to deeply really contemplate this subject. Okay, so much has been said and earned by discussing money. But just as the Venus sequence aims to sort of open our hearts, the pearl aims to guide us towards true prosperity. And we can learn to prosper by releasing our mental tightness around money. Like, this is the sequence that you really rewrite your money story. You can really let loose of a lot of old limiting beliefs around money and really redefine prosperity for yourself. So it requires forgiving yourself, adopting a little bit of a gentler approach, and as in all of the sequences, the transformation occurs inwardly rather than going through the external, right? Your external actions will only change through that inner contemplation. In the pearl sequence view, prosperity is result of living out your purpose. And it follows and it flows through a more open-hearted approach to life. And it's the culmination of the wisdom that you've acquired through taking yourself through the different sequences. And it really brings it into a more practical application. This is where the being and doing sort of merge, is in the pearl sequence. Now, prosperity is more than just spending energy you've accumulated. It's about using it wisely. And remember, everything is energy, right? So this is about how can we best use our energy wisely. It's about investing it in what enhances us, what inspires us, what simplifies and lightens you, versus what drains, burdens, and complicates things. Prosperity it's a state of mind. It's an attitude. It's and because of that, you really need to cultivate it within yourself. It's really the prosperity is a state of being, really. So the pearl really prompts you to examine how you accumulate all the things, whether they be that you're accumulating weight in the physical or the emotional or intellectual, because that's really going to affect your level of prosperity. This is really the pearl sequence, I feel like, is really about the city of Gate 53, which is superabundance. And if you have the Gene Keys book, I highly recommend you go and look at that city, because it really can give you a different way of looking at the pearl sequence from a contemplation standpoint. Now, the Pearl sequence operates a little bit differently than the other two sequences on the Golden Path. Remember, the Golden Path is all three sequences. And where you're still going through a sequence, it also creates this like an energetic vortex in your life. And in the center of the vortex is the pearl itself. It's like the crystallization of your prosperity. And your pearl blooms as a reward unlocked through, taking yourself through the sequence, finding grace. When you start to really live into your purpose, all of that comes together on a material plane in practical life. So let's get to the specific spheres. So we start where the Venus sequin, where the Venus sequin, what is going on? The Venus sequence ended. Your vocation. I'm not gonna edit that out just for your own humor value. All right, so we're in the vocation. If you remember your vocation, that is where your core wound is housed. That underlying challenge theme in your life, right? When you look at the shadow of this sphere, most people that I've had conversation with is like, oh yeah, I get that. I see that throughout my life. I've got the 49 gene key here, and the shadow is reaction. And I'm like, oh yeah, I see that. I see that theme throughout my entire life. I've seen that theme. So in the Pearl sequence, the question to be asked here is, how can I be the greatest service to the world? Your vocation contains within it a very highly specific type of genius. Your genius. There's some gold nugget about whatever purpose you have in life can be done through this specific lens. For instance, I've got the 4 here. My line 4 is here, which means I'm very much meant to shake people out of their comfort zones. The gift of the 49 is revolution. So with me, and if you know me, you know this is very true, it's probably going to be in some sort of very direct way, like not subtle. I mean, when people come into my life, when they work with me, it's because they really want to get their act together and they really want a radical change. They're not looking for like little baby steps. So when you move from your vocation to your culture sphere, this is the path of the initiative. This is where the gauntlet is thrown down by the universe. This is where the entire Golden Path says, okay, it's really time to embody these teachings in a way that's going to show up in the outer world in a practical sense. So the sphere of culture describes a process by which the universal intelligence connects you to your people, your tribe, your allies in life. This is where synchronicity really starts to show up a lot. Now, in each sequence, there's a trigger point where your energy can get really, really stuck. And the activation sequence, it's the evolution. And the Venus sequence, it's the IQ. And the Pearl, it's here in culture. If you feel really blocked around prosperity, this is probably an area that's going to give you some very deep insight as to why. Richard Rudd, the founder of the Gene Keys, said this trigger point along your golden path can even catalyze the secret to material prosperity. You need to allow your awareness to delve into the shadow pattern and break open the pattern of your poverty consciousness. So if you've got poverty consciousness, if you've got scarcity consciousness, this is the particular sphere that's going to give you the most insight, more than likely. Now, one of the things that I remember Richard saying about this sphere is we don't need to understand how the group consciousness operates. It's complex beyond measure. I think that's what he said. We simply need to know where we belong and find our home within the whole. And this, as I said, the sphere is about finding your people. And this was really helpful for me because I hold the line 6 in this sphere. And the line 6 is all about system. And in the past, Line sixes were either within the domain of religious authority or the outcast. So you were like at the pinnacle of, being revered, or you were not. So from birth, the sixth line carries this powerful intuition about the holistic nature of things, and that's why it's a little bit different than a lot of the other lines. And culture is often cruel to such people, because when you hold the line 6 in this specific sphere, you're usually on one end of the spectrum. You're either people are really oh, that's interesting, or oh, they fear you. And when you have the line 6 here, you sort of wonder I think at times if you even have people. And my human design profile is a 3-5, and the 5 is the heretic. So yeah, I could definitely feel this line going through this sequence. And I've spent a lot of time here. So moving from the culture to the brand is the pathway of growth. And this is where you start really feeling the integration at a different level. It's really locking in at a different level. And when we arrive at the brand, this is really a pivotal point of the entire golden path, because this is where you start at in your activation sequence. It's called, your brand and your life's work are the same thing. You're just looking at it through a different lens. So your brand is how you project your inner essence to the world. And true prosperity comes from being recognized and appreciated and fully received by others. And when I say fully received by others, I mean the people that you're meant to be received by. And that really depends on how honestly and how clearly you communicate you. I mean, your branding involves refining your communication style to reflect your truth self rather than conforming to some sort of preconceived notion of you or expectation. And when you're on this path, and this discovery sort of allows you to be more natural, more self-conscious with others. It's more you. It's the sphere of this is your voice. Okay. Now, as we move from the brand to the pearl, we are on the pathway of service. And this is the fusion of all the sequences. The meaning of the pearl is that true prosperity is only found in a life lived very well. A life filled with curiosity and an open heart, and, always remembering the essential with a higher purpose, right? I think that's one of the reasons why I like the pearl sequence so much, is because I think everyone's purpose is the same, and the purpose is to the evolution of your soul and to give back to the collective. And I think that when we get to this point in this sequence, it's really about, okay, I know all these things about myself. Now, how can I best be in service to the collective as well? And I think let's circle back to something that I mentioned earlier, money, because I think that's what people usually have in mind when we talk about the pearl sequence. And Richard has a very humorous take on this. He said, we don't make money. We allow it in, and we observe its flow in and out of our lives. And as you integrate the clarity of the pearl teaching into your life, you'll likely find yourself worried less about money and enjoying its natural ebb and flow. Prosperity arises from observing and detaching rather than hoping and trying, which often characterize our relationship with money. And as you embody your higher purpose, money will simply appear when it's needed. And contemplating the line and the gene key of your pearl is going to help you find deep clarity around your true inner relationship with money. And honestly, with the heart of prosperity in general. I've got the 29-3 in my pearl, and the shadow of the 29 is half-heartedness. And the gift is commitment, and the city is devotion. And I have found so much deep truth in this for me. I definitely know the difference in my body when I'm operating in half-heartedness versus when I'm all in. And I can see where my relationship with money, with my relationship with prosperity, with my relationship with all of those things has really been on a roller coaster with that. Especially when I'm in the shadow. Like, it's really obvious to me. And as for the line 3 is all about the only reason why to have money is to have fun and help others. Like, it's like the line 3 really likes to increase the joy in everyone's life around them. And I will say that throughout, it doesn't matter what line you have, we are not here on earth to suffer from in stress around money. That there's nothing in any of the teachings that says that, well, if you're a line 1, then you're supposed to be poor, and if you're a line 6, you're supposed to be wealthy. That is not how this works. Regardless of what line you have and what jinky you have, it's all about what your version of prosperity is and the lens of which you look at it. Because I've said on previous podcasts, not everybody wants to be Jeff Bezos, right? There are some people that want to be a Jeff Bezos, and good for them, I guess. It's about defining what success is for you. So, regardless of what line you have, it's like the opposite of hoarding anything. It really comes down to a level of elegant simplicity. Now, this has been an overview of the Pearl sequence. There's a lot more nuance and depth here. It would be impossible for me to do on a podcast. It really takes months to go through this because all the work and the intention is around, of course, embodiment, right? It's not acquiring the knowledge because that's not going to change your belief systems or your behavioral problems. So, as I've said before, human design gives you an architecture plan, your source code. And I feel like the Gene Keys really gives you a path of understanding your own source code and being able to embody it at a deeper level. So I hope you have found this episode interesting and insightful. If you are interested in having a reading where I go into your human design, your Gene Keys, I'm going to put a link in the show notes so you can check that out. If you haven't already, you can pull down your free human design source code report from my website. I will put that in the show notes as well. As always, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. If you found this helpful, please share it out. If you feel so inclined, please leave a review. And remember to find beauty every day and seek the magic in the mundane. Thank you for listening to the Source Code Podcast. If you found this episode insightful and feel moved to, please leave a review and share it out with those you believe will find it helpful. You can check out my website for more information at www.adrianmcdonald.com. And for more of my more regular musings, connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and LinkedIn. I hope you have a beautiful week.